Good evening, everyone. Today is the Planning Commission meeting for the 20th of February of 24. And for those of us that didn't see each other at the last meeting, Happy New Year. There's some of us that we didn't see each other, and there's some of us that are new.
Yes.
Which we'll address later.
Yes.
So we will call the Planning Commission meeting for the City of Lathrup Village to order at 7:03 appears per my computer. And we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Uh-oh. Madam Clerk, you have a roll call, please.
Roll call. Chair Stansberry.
Present.
Commissioner Disick.
Present.
Commissioner Fobbs. Commissioner Hammond.
Present.
Commissioner McClure. Commissioner Scuzzle.
Present.
Is that right?
Yes.
Scuzzle. Commissioner Tamarelli.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Everyone has a copy of the agenda, even though I received it just an hour ago.
Updated.
The
agenda
updated,
hasn't changed.
the updated
hasn't
agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
You need to excuse the two members. who are-
Mr. Fobbs is not here and Ms. McClure is
So we
not
need a
here.
motion.
Need a
Yeah,
motion
I'll
to.
make a motion
That's
to
right.
excuse Commissioners McClure and Fobbs from the meeting.
Second?
It's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We were really hoping Fobbs was just going to swing in the door. So now we can accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move to accept the agenda as presented. I second that.
It's been moved and second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? None. The motion carries. This would help a lot. I knew something was missing. That's better. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yes.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting?
I move to accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
It's been moved.
I'll second it.
Okay.
It's been moved and second to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. All right. We have a public comment
Yes,
for any items related to the agenda.
correct.
Bruce Canner. Just wanted to make one comment about the one suggestion for the discussion tonight on the strip center with the laundromat. I know that they were 4 parking spaces short, and the applicant proposed adding 4 spaces on the Cambridge side, the south side,
Excuse me.
where there's a tree, and I know Giffords Webster had recommended moving it to the north side. I would just take that one step further and just ask you to consider possibly, since you have the discretion to reduce the number of parking spaces, I think it's what, by 10 or 15%, that maybe we don't put the extra 4 spaces on the north side and just not have the 4 spaces at all, especially given the fact that there are 22 spaces, I think, in front that can't be legally counted, but are there because they're in the Southfield Road public right of way. So it might be something worth discussing. I just wanted to throw that out there as a suggestion.
Thank you. Any other public comment related to items on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business. The First item under old business is the site plan approval for 27300 Southfield Road.
All right. So hi, planning commissioners. Nice to see you all. We have before you the site plan for 27300 Southfield Road. This is plans put forth by Abro Management for the renovation of the plaza just south of us with the laundromat. Should be a fairly, you should be familiar with this project since this is not the first time we have seen it. We discussed this back in December and had a pretty lengthy conversation with the engineer about the site and specifically the configuration of the parking and the challenges that they're experiencing meeting the requirements that are in the zoning ordinance. So that item had been tabled until the applicant could provide us some additional information. They've since revised their plans, and that is what we are going to consider here before us today. We do have a representative from this project here to answer any questions, but I will let Eric take you through his analysis since he's got all the pretty colors and has spent a significant amount of time going through this parking analysis for us.
Yep. So good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Peach with Peoples Webster, the city's planning consultant. So in regards to 27300 Southfield Road, the applicant is proposing a full remodel of the interior and exterior of the facility, the existing facility. Site plan is shown here on your screen, and we can bounce back and forth as need be. As I said, the strip center is existing. There are parking spaces on site along Southfield Road, shown on the upper side of the site plan, and then 18 spaces in the rear, which would be accessed via an alley. So one of the main focal points that we want to discuss is the one-way direction of the alley on the east side of the property. So as you can see on the site plan, from left to right, you would enter the property from Cambridge on the south and access the parking spaces, the 18 parking spaces in the alley from a one-way configuration and exit out on California to the north. And so currently alleys are two-way configurations, so in order to propose this type of layout would be an agreement from the city in order to pursue a layout of this manner. So keeping our focus on the east side, adjacent to this property is single-family residential, and so the ordinance requires per section 5.5.3 that any commercial development requires a wall, a buffer wall. And so the type of material is very specific in the ordinance, and it states that it must be masonry at a height of 5 feet. So in addition to that, that's what's denoted in orange on the screen. I'm having some trouble with the cursor here. So this is where that wall would go. The applicant had proposed, at least within the plans as submitted, a fence that was not masonry, and so I did reach out and indicate that the minimum standard is the masonry, and if they have the ability to address that tonight, that they are prepared to do so. If you look at the site plan on both the south along Cambridge and the north along California, the ordinance allows for a reduction of the height from 5 feet down to 3 feet, 20 feet back from the property line. So that's what is indicated here, that the transition in the height of the fence can be reduced to 3 feet. I believe it's actually a requirement to be reduced to 3 feet in those two locations. With that being said, there is a requirement for a drop-off loading zone, which is noted in green here. The dimensions of this space meets the minimum standard of 10 by 40, I believe it is. And so as you can see, that takes up 3 parking spaces. And so the parking analysis that the applicant provided us indicated that the number of parking spaces that would be required for this facility is not met by the on-site parking spaces proposed. And so that's why, if you look on the left side of the site plan here, they were proposing 4 additional on-street parking spaces. which would unfortunately remove an existing mature tree. And so we had asked that if they were to pursue on-street parking spaces, that they would direct their attention to the north side. So we did speak with the city engineer, with Giffords, to see if that was an option, and they indicated that it was, and it's actually a preferred scenario compared to Cambridge to the south. So, as was stated earlier, that there may be a preference to not require those additional 4 spaces, then we would keep our focus within the on-site parking spaces. But just be mindful that the drop-off or loading zone would take up 3 of those parking spaces temporarily, at least. So if that's something the Planning Commission may consider, there's a reduction of 3 spaces there. Looking towards the north, or to the upper part of the site plan, these are those locations of on-street parking spaces within the Southfield right-of-way. The bold line is the property line, and so the 22 parking spaces here, while available potentially, are not allowed to be counted towards the parking. So, to backtrack a little bit, so the proposed site plan is making reuse of an existing building. The one component, as you can see here in yellow at the corner, is the laundromat, and so that's what was kind of providing a little bit of a slowdown in terms of getting this before the Planning Commission, because as you're aware of the history, there was no standard set for self-service laundromat, but since now there is, they want to pursue a laundromat in that location. And so the site plan of the existing facility has 7 tenant spaces, and the proposed will be 8. One of which is the laundromat again. We do have the standards for that. It was accounted for in the off-street parking analysis. And then all the other vacant spaces, the 7, are just the standards for retail. And then on top of this image is the elevation showing some of the materials that are proposed with the exterior renovation, most of which are in line with the intent of the ordinance. The fiber cement siding, metal awnings over windows and doors, cultured stone and brick, metal cap, and then of a lesser extent, the stucco crowns shown here in black. And so then this is just a slide showing the locations of where the 5-foot wall would be located. And because this would be within the city's public right-of-way, that being the alley, there would be a coordinated effort with the city as well as the adjacent property owners for installing and erecting that wall in those locations. So I believe that's all I have. Otherwise, the review summary on the review report basically outlines the items that would need to be addressed by the Planning Commission. I believe I covered them all, but like I said, the comment prior to the presentation had indicated that because of the extra parking spaces in close proximity, i.e. those within the Southfield Road right-of-way, that perhaps the Planning Commission may take into consideration not requiring the additional 4 spaces within the public right-of-way of either California or Cambridge boulevards on either side. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I believe the applicant is here to help go through the conversation and answer any questions as well.
Any questions to give? Excuse me. Do you have any questions? I'm sorry.
So I had a question for you, Leanne. Like, what are we authorized to do in terms of parking leeway? Bruce mentioned in his public comment, we had like 10 to 15% of the parking requirement that we could potentially recommend waiving or not requiring.
Well,
What are we legally authorized to do?
shows, I guess the short 9% is what the shortage would be, I see from Eric's report. So let me look at the, let me look in the ordinance and I will get back with you.
Okay, great.
Just a minute.
Feedback that I've heard from residents is that we want to keep trees in the city, so I think that the suggestion to keep the tree on the south side of the building is probably something that I assume most people would support. And if we have leeway to avoid requiring additional parking on the north side, that kind of makes that whole point moot anyway. So I think that's probably a good thing. I remember we had seen or heard from some residents during the renovation of one of the buildings on the southeast quadrant about like the modern look and feel of that. And also when we had a site plan review a couple months ago for a building across Southfield Road on the west side of Southfield Road, that the materials being used kind of provide a modern look to the building. So I'm curious what the planning commissioners would think about if that's acceptable and in line with what we want the corridor to look like, or do we want to encourage kind of more historical look and feel? I don't know if that's an issue or not, but it's something I wanted to bring up. And then the last thing that I had was about lighting. It says in the notes from Giffords Webster that the site plan notes exterior lighting will demonstrate compliance with ordinance standards. But is that implying that the site plan does not currently or will in the future?
No, it doesn't imply that. It currently does not. So just any lighting that would be proposed would.
So there is no lighting plan, but the site plan states the lighting, any lighting will be in compliance with the ordinance.
Yes, and I believe there was a note on the site plan that indicated that any new lighting would be the face down and meet the standards of lighting that points down.
Yeah, it's because it's so close, the alleyway, it's so close to residential properties
Yep.
on the east side. It will be important to make sure that there isn't bleed over lighting into the yards of those houses. That's what I had.
Eric, did you receive an answer regarding the fence? I mean, the wall?
I did reach out to the applicant. We did have that conversation. The contact person that I spoke to regarding that was not able to come, so I don't know if, so they do have a representative here to discuss that, knowing fair well of what the minimum standards are and the expectations of the wall.
If you want to come
Yeah,
forward.
feel free.
Feel free.
Yes, Fadi Salon, on behalf of Sky Laundromat and Abro Property. We are prepared to put up what's the name of it, wall. We just did it in one of our other car washes. We have some car washes. We did it in one of our car washes by a company that did it for us. Poured Brick Walls Incorporated, and we're more than happy to put that one here if we need to, which seems like we do, so we're ready to do that as well.
Okay.
I can answer any other questions while I'm up here.
Yeah, there was a reference to the wall that was suggested as a privacy fence with 5 feet tall. Obviously, this would be a cement or masonry fence.
Yes.
Also 5 feet tall. Eric mentioned that at the final 3 feet? 20 feet.
Yeah.
3 feet high.
The height of the fence goes from 5 feet to 3 feet for the last 20 feet before each street. So that's just helpful for being able to see around the corner, especially with a driveway on adjacent to each side of that wall. So it's just it would save you money.
Yeah.
So I'm just noting that as well, that would be one thing I would recommend.
Any other questions for the applicant or Eric regarding the site plan as presented?
I'm not sure if who would be the person to answer it, but the parking spaces in the right of way. We can't use those or use them for a count. We can kind of consider them, correct? Do we have any idea what would likely happen to those? Susie, you've been involved to some degree with the ever-present Southfield Road redevelopment. Do we have any idea what would likely happen to those spots? And I know it's who knows when and reality and all that, but just your understanding as of today.
My understanding is that there's the potential for any of the parking in the road commission's right of way. They're kind of up for grabs for adding additional lanes, right? So the concept for this intersection at 696 is that a right turn lane pocket would be added. So we would essentially keep the same number of travel lanes, but then add turn pockets on the west side, and then there would be a gradual taper lane going northbound. So in all likelihood, that's what the plans call for right now. If and when this project ever gets funded, those are the plans that would be implemented. The engineer and I have discussed, internally how it sure would be nice to not see property taken, not see that parking reduced. Certainly would be a cost savings to us in implementing the project, but it would definitely help out our business and property owners. So, it remains to be seen whether or not that would actually happen, but that would certainly be what we advocate for, is retaining those spaces.
Okay. And is there any standard on the direction of the alley? I know in the old days, at least where I grew up, the alleys were the opposite direction of the street they were closest to. Do we have any restriction?
Our
there?
alley traffic is two-way traffic. So
Oh, it
there
is.
it is
All
two-way
All
traffic.
of them are, okay.
Yep, all throughout. So any consideration to, change the direction, limit the direction, that would have to go through the city council. Would
Right.
have to take that action. I surmise that based on some of the other street work that's been done, that would also involve doing some sort of traffic impact study, or otherwise contacting, having the police chief, traffic control order is something else that may have to be considered as part of that, but that's outside the scope of the planning commission.
Does the applicant have a preference which way the alley goes?
Whatever you guys like.
But that can't be considered as part of tonight's.
Yeah.
That would certainly be a future if the planning commission wanted to make a recommendation to the city council, they could certainly do so, but that would be future action by planning commission, or by city council.
Can we approve this site plan if it has things in it that are non-compliant and require city council approval?
They would, you can
We could
approve it with
recommend it
conditions.
or we could approve the site plan and then recommend conditions.
You can approve with conditions. There is, if they wanted to keep, and this was in the summary, if they wanted to try and keep that one-way configuration, really their only option right now is to seek an encroachment license from city council, which would ostensibly allow them to use the alleyway as it was their own property. So that's one way they can kind of tackle that problem, or they can further modify the angle of the spaces to allow access both ways.
And if I may, just to your earlier question regarding, yes, it is in, I verified what Mr. Cantor had stated about the ordinance at section 5.1319. So it allows the planning commission may reduce the number of required parking spaces for non-residential uses by up to 25%, subject to documentation that such a reduction will not negatively impact adjacent properties or be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance.
So I think the follow-up on that then is between, if we were going to be approving the site plan with a requirement for fewer the parking spaces than are required by the ordinance, and there are also additional 3 spaces that will at least periodically be taken up by loading, right? Understanding that the types of businesses in the spaces might change periodically, right? As tenants come and go and what have you. But does your company have a concern about, like, are the spaces available going to be full most of the time because the businesses are busy enough, and could that create spillover traffic on the streets, or the municipal parking lot right across the street to the north. I think those are some of the concerns that I would have about being okay with fewer number of parking spaces. Even understanding that there are 22 or 23 parking spaces along Southfield Road that can be utilized, even though they can't be counted towards compliance with the ordinance.
So you're talking about just the laundromat just by itself, or all of this?
The entire building.
Yeah, I mean, for the laundromat, I'll tell you, we won't need more than 4 or 5. I mean, you know, minus an employee, because there won't be an employee there all day, you know? And you'll have people coming in and out. Most people will drop their laundry, leave it and go, you know? So you're not gonna have that, at least for laundromat. You account for those spaces, but they're not always, 99% of the time, they're not always gonna be taken. As far as the other business, we have to play that on as how we go. Obviously, as they come and go, and you guys approve them based on those parking spaces that are available. But I mean, they're not fairly big units, so, you know, the most of the time they're, even if it's a dine, you know, it's takeout restaurants or stuff like that. That's what our plan is, you know, small retail stores, nothing where they have to dine in or sit down or anything of that nature.
Yeah, so you don't anticipate large deliveries on an ongoing basis,
No.
like throughout the day or throughout the course of the week. You'll have trucks periodically pulling up and using that loading area to unload.
No, not anytime soon, to say.
Once you have tenants filling those
Yes.
spaces, because it's currently empty, right?
Yeah, right now we have 2 smaller tenants,
Two
but
tenants.
one is not really open, and the other one is only open a few months out of the year.
Yeah.
Susie, can I verify with you about the traffic patterns and what's going to be looked at? I
Sure.
live on Cambridge, and so there is concern among the residents on that street about what this will do, because there's already well over 200 to 300 cars that go down that road as people are trying to avoid
Sure,
Southfield and 696, and they don't slow down.
right.
So what's the impact of this going to be?
I mean, that is difficult to say, right? I mean, there's no way for the planning commission to
Right.
regulate, cut through traffic, right? That is certainly, that is something that we can, no pun intended, put on the police radar, right? And ask them to, monitor. I mean, and they do, right? I know, let's see, also down there on, I believe it was Cambridge, could have been Sunnybrook, but we do have there is some additional signage that we can put up, right? Again, that's something that's through the police department for their traffic control orders. Certainly, what we've done for other properties that we've noticed, if there's like spillover parking, right? That was problematic a few years ago, closer towards 12 Mile. And so that's, again, that was the police department implementing a traffic control order, making sure that there was no parking. In that instance, it was particularly no parking on the mailbox side of the street, and that was policed regularly.
Right.
And that seems to have addressed at least the bulk of those concerns. I mean, is it going to go away entirely? Probably not. So I would imagine that if we are noticing those, similar kinds of traffic patterns here or at any other location, we would take those similar steps, right? I do believe this applicant is a bit different, though. I mean, a lot of times there is, they have all the parking available to them, and it's overflowing. Like, that was the experience up towards 12 Mile. This applicant does have those extra spaces. Even though we can't count them, they do exist. I don't know if that really answers your questions, but
One of the concerns I have is changing the direction of the alley,
Okay.
if it's one way, because then everything would be coming out on Cambridge. People are not going to want to make a left turn from Cambridge onto Southfield 90% of the time,
right.
so they're going to cut down the street. So all I ask is that be considered as part of what the police are looking at in terms of traffic.
Sure.
Because like I said, it's already bad. I've almost been hit getting my mail as people are flying down that road.
Sure.
My mailbox was knocked over twice, so.
Well, and in terms of the alley, you know, changing the directions of the alley for any sort of one-way configuration, I mean, that would have to be studied.
I know, and I
right?
don't want to sit here and look like I'm complaining. I'm just wanting to raise some issues that I think need to be looked at
Certainly.
as they're looking at the total impact of this proposal.
Certainly. Okay.
Susie,
Mhm.
or Eric, or the applicant, there's 18 spots that are configured to be behind the building in a one-way direction. Is there any particular reason they're in a one-way? Why can't there just be 9 and keep it a two-way alley and just have each, like, going in opposite directions? Was there a particular reason that they were set up to be a one-way?
Yep, that's a good question, and the answer is that if you were to keep the 90-degree headed parking spaces without the angle,
No. There's 18 going in one direction like this. If there were 9 going in this direction and 9 going in that direction, then the alley is still two-way. That's my question. Not this way.
You
9 and not.
you can't impede the flow of traffic in either direction, right? So if I'm heading north and I'm
Yes,
parking this way.
and I'm heading
There isn't
south
room
and
for
I'm
two
parking
cars
that
to
way. It's
pass,
already
what you're saying.
it's not a two-way alley?
It is a two-way.
It is, but they're gonna take up part of the alley with the parking spaces.
Mhm.
There isn't
By
room
putting
in the
them on an
remainder.
angle, it's taking up part of the alley.
It is.
I'm trying to follow, that's all.
Yes.
the
Yeah.
overall width would not be sufficient. That being the drive aisle of the alley plus the width for the parking spaces. I don't have that figure in front of me, but it was taken into consideration, just the overall width and then the width of the parking spaces.
Does the installation of the wall also reduce that, or not? Does the installation of the wall have any impact on that? Or is it the same width even with the wall?
It's the same width, because, yeah, it would be right on the property line.
Yeah, so that's not
But how many spaces are behind the building today, the way it exists today?
They're not striped in the Google Maps picture, so I think it's hard to, do you?
I mean,
How many people usually park behind the building? Do you have any idea? I mean, right now it's
Well, they
tough
just
because
bought
you've
the
only
building.
got,
Yeah.
yeah.
so they would,
you
I
and
don't
the-
think, I'm just, historically, I mean, was there a way to understand how many spaces were behind the building initially?
I think they're predominantly parallel to the building.
But how many spaces?
Well, let's see.
8,
8 to
I believe
9.
this is 40.
Approximately.
Well, if they're at 45, they
That's
cut it in half.
262.
Yeah, probably 9, toe to toe.
9,
I think that's what it'll be.
about 9?
Yeah.
So if there are 9 spaces parallel parked, what presents the same dilemma if I'm coming north and you're coming south and we're both parallel parking? We still got the same, we're still coming at each other. The only difference is I'm doing this and you're doing that. So why does that change if I'm doing this and you're doing that? I'm just trying to understand. I mean, parking's not my area of expertise.
I think it may have everything to do with the angle.
It's the angle.
Okay, I believe so. I don't know how accurate that is, if there's anyone that's more versed in parking layouts, but
What I'm really trying to get to is this site plan it hinges on a number of things. Despite the renovation part of it, despite the stucco, I mean, we've already set a precedent with that down the street. But despite that, the willingness to put the wall up, a lot of it hinges on city council agreeing to a one-way alley, to letting them in there right away, a lot of that. I'm just trying to understand the rationale, if there's a way to not have them have to go through that process and still be able to fit what we're trying to accomplish, what they're trying to accomplish. I don't have an answer, I'm just trying to understand.
right. And again, I think it's because of the angle of the parking spaces, so if you were to eliminate the way that it's shown right now in the alley and implement parallel parking spaces, and that resulted in 9, then you'd have the deficiency of however many spaces they still need to meet code compliance for parking. And that may essentially work, recognizing how many parking spaces would be short, and if that's something that falls within the 25% that the planning commission is able to waive, I just don't have that number in front of me to determine what that would be. But we can calculate that.
There, how many spaces short now?
So you need 44 spaces. If you can drop 25, it takes you down to 33. You got 22 in the front, plus 9. It's 31, and if you put a couple on the side, you'd be
Is
at
it
the
parallel
33.
parking still gonna require city approval? Still
No,
gonna
because
take-
the parallel parking will be entirely within their property.
Okay.
So now, so I think we're walking to where I'm kind of going.
Okay.
So if the parallel parking stayed basically the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
and the commission agreed to do the 25% waiver based on our document reason why, we're only short one parking spot.
One
Based
or
on-
two.
Two, based on the.
22 in the front plus
Yep.
9 in the back, 8 or 9 in the back. You'd be at 31, 30, 31. You need 2 more. 44, you said on page
Yeah, right here.
8
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
is a requirement.
yep. And then that goes to not trying to use the side to add the 4
Yeah.
additional spaces, even though they're
You
available.
might need those to get to the 33. though.
And if you use the spaces on the side for 4, don't change the alley and keep it the way it exists today, so that doesn't affect anybody. Then you'd have enough spaces if we had a documented reason why. Then it avoids going through the city for the one-way.
Mm-hmm.
It avoids a lot of the congestion because it wouldn't change anything that it's doing today.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is we'd have to be willing to give up grass on the side, on the, I'm sorry, on
California
the.
side.
on
North, on the north
Thank you.
side.
I'm looking at the picture, but
I know, I can't look at the pic, right? There you go.
just trying to find a
That-
viable solution
That could work.
that allows for a redevelopment of a site that needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Parking is always going to be an issue in the city of Lathrup Village, regardless of what we don't want to talk about.
Right.
And understanding that there are 20, are there still 22 spots in the,
There's 20,
Yeah,
yes,
22
22 spots out
right
front,
away.
yep.
there's still 22 spots that's not counted.
Right.
So there's really 2 that we're short.
Yeah.
So
It
how-
appears to be 2.
And I think we're trying to agree with Bruce that we don't want to give up grass, but we might be stuck if we can't come to an understanding in the alley. Am I getting it right?
Yes, you are getting it right. Here, I'll throw one extra little
Go ahead.
option in there. This was something that we had discussed in December. The applicant could certainly pursue shared parking agreements with either the city or his neighbor to the south.
That's true.
Those are also options. You would still be required to come to city council to get that approval for the shared parking, but
There's a lot easier to get a shared parking agreement than to say you want to change the alley to a one-way, do a study for that and a whole bunch of other things, than to say, can you please let me use 5 parking spaces?
exactly.
That's a hint. That was my only question. I was trying, and then, since he's already addressed the wall, related to the wall though, for those of us who live near businesses that have these brick walls
Yes,
behind,
yes.
everybody's not very fond of having a brick wall, up against their property line. Has there been any conversation with the resident regarding the possibility of this wall? Because I know it's the applicant's responsibility to talk to the.
It is the applicant's responsibility, but for the applicant to do a different material, that will require a variance in front of in front of the city council. So, certainly, if the applicant wanted to speak to the adjacent property owners, regarding the materials and, pursue a variance, that's an
It's up
option
to
that's
them.
available to them.
But no, since they already agreed to the wall, I was just, it's one thing to go outside and see the wall, see nothing, and the next thing you see a wall.
I understand.
Okay. Any other, that's all the questions I have.
Two quick things. One, the alley, where the wall sits, is that technically or actually the property, the residential property owners,
Cities,
city-owned?
it's on the alley
Okay.
side.
And it's the commercial establishment's responsibility to maintain it?
That is correct.
Okay. The second thing I noticed that you identified 10 waste containers for the 8 facilities that would be placed in the back as opposed to a dumpster location. But you also mentioned the possibility of a restaurant or restaurants. Are you prepared to change that arrangement? Should you put a restaurant in one or more of the facilities? And how have you thought about that, and what have you thought about?
Well, for starters, we usually don't put more than one of the same kind of tenant in a building, just to keep our tenants happy. So if we were to have any kind of restaurant, it would be just one. And we are prepared to look at that when the time comes, if it ever comes. We can't guarantee that there'll be a restaurant, but we still, we'll put the small garbages there, and all they would need on top of that would be an oil, like a place to displace oil, and that would be it. And we'll keep it as there, and maybe we'll do more pickups rather than get a bigger dumpster.
Yeah,
And just
but
as far
I-
as the wall, really
Sorry.
quickly, I know you said about the neighbors. So like I said on our other property, the neighbors seem to like it more because it blocks out light, sound, and you want some privacy, You don't want people in businesses who are like some places are open later. You don't want people peeking in your window. They're not saying they're gonna peek in the window, but I'm saying, they're right there,
It's a solid wall.
So that most residential tenants like it, because
Okay.
it gives them that privacy, from what I've heard and seen and what I've been through, but maybe it's different for the couple neighbors here.
I will point out regarding the dumpster question, when we did our amendments last year for dumpster and rubbish, we had the option for, obviously, the dumpsters, also to do the single pullouts, but then there's also the provision that allows a property owner to install I think it's a 2-hour fire rated space, right?
Right.
So we know that this is certainly constrained, fitting a dumpster in, maybe a bit challenging, to say the least. So I think, we would certainly encourage the applicant to pursue that interior space if that, if that would work for them. But as he said, it's a future conversation, right?
One last thing I would note is, as far as installing the wall, it looks like in the pictures that are actually listed, this resident here clearly takes good care of their hedges. So it will be important to communicate with the residents who are going to have a wall erected next to their property to make sure that if there are needed changes to the landscaping, that they're in agreement about it. Not just because they happen to keep it, just I noticed that they're doing a nice job keeping these hedges up. But it's going to be some sort of an impact, so it will be important that they are aware of what's going to happen and that they're confident that their landscaping isn't going to be damaged or changed without their agreement.
I agree with you, and we'll definitely do that.
Okay.
So we are back to the same original question. Before us is a site plan approval, which obviously has some concerns related to parking. The concern related to the wall has been addressed. If we are going to consider approving the site plan, we're going to have to make some changes or conditions before we send it to council.
This does not need to go before council unless they are pursuing the encroachment license or variance.
If we're gonna approve it as is, it's gotta go before council for the.
Oh, yes, yes.
For the, what am I call it, the alley.
Encroachment license.
But if we're gonna make changes to it, that's different. But there's been no real consensus yet from the commission of what the recommendation or acceptance or not acceptance would be. And second, we would still have to address the fact that we're 2 parking spaces short. Even if we all buy into the analysis of keep the parking the same as it exists today, we're gonna be 2 spaces short. They're gonna go against tearing up the grass.
Well, and it sounded like we,
No, that's right, because there still have to be 2 more spaces, that's right.
so the two options that I think were discussed were building on-street parking on the north side of the building, 4 additional spaces, which would solve that problem, or pursuing a shared parking agreement with a property to the north or south of the building.
Yes. The shared parking agreement, council.
Yes.
Either one of those has to, well, no, the building 4 parking spaces does not have to go before.
That's right.
That's true.
That's the dilemma. Is
But
it,
the plans would have to also show what the new parking layout's gonna be. I mean, right now, you're.
Yes, we would get updated plans, right?
To make sure that when we're saying 8.
Yeah, I mean, we're guessing it's 9 behind the building, it might be
Correct.
8.
Right.
Previous
I only know we'll know how many spaces is gonna be Giffel, so.
I'm
He's
looking-
sitting there counting, so.
Well, I'm looking for a previous site plan where I think we had them show and dimension how many parallel parking spaces would fit, and I'm just not finding it in my files.
Here, we can do this. That's yours.
Yeah, but I think,
It's probably one of the first ones.
yeah. The orange ones. What are parking stalls for?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
One.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. The 12?
Yeah, right. No, 1, 2,
20,
6.
Because 40, you've had 2 cars.
Yeah. Well, count your spaces up. 2,
Right.
4, 6, 8,
Right.
11.
There's 11.
11.
Oh, there's our 2. That's your question?
You're gonna
It's
click
11.
your click
There you
thing. Here, Eric's gonna hopefully share. There you go.
So every 40 feet is 2 parallel parking spaces. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11.
11.
Yes, sir.
All right.
We don't have to share or cut grass.
There you go.
Keep everybody happy.
There we are. So now it's in the hands of the commission. If there's any further discussion, any further questions, any,
So would that be, you're proposing to use that as the site plan that would be approved today?
Just for the parking, right?
it'd be modifying the existing plan to update it for the changes related to the parking in the alley.
Yes. Yep.
As depicted, parking as depicted on this plan.
Yes.
Right.
So what's the date of that plan?
Because ultimately, the site plan hasn't changed, because it's basically just a snapshot of everything that's existing. It would just be the layout, the proposed layout of what's occurring behind the building. The date on this?
Yeah, so we can say. Oh, we could have just looked at your note that said.
It was old, it was a while
And
ago.
I'm sorry, just to clarify too, then, this one, then there's no green space encroachment or needing, or is there still gonna need to make some new, just not have to get a parking agreement with anybody? But they'd still have to install some on that lawn area?
Based on the 11
Yeah,
and.
22.
yeah.
Based on 11 and based on if the planning commission agrees to exercise this 25% reduction, they would not have to take over the green space. would
They
not
don't
have-
need to install the 4 additional.
They wouldn't have to take over the green space and the alley would remain 2-way just as it is today. Matter of fact, the alley will remain almost as it is today. It would just be the 25% reduction. And there will be no one-way alley, no angle parking.
Just for reference, those plans are from August 8th.
August 8th?
August 8th, yep.
Okay.
So if you make any motion. you can
Just reference
add
that,
on
plan from that date.
All right.
Yeah,
Is a 25% reduction, is there precedent for that? I don't have the history.
I haven't been here. We have not done it since I was here. We discussed it in some detail. Once we realized we needed to have an overall parking discussion for the city because we don't have enough parking as it is, we were trying to find ways to be able to allow for things to continue to move forward. And the 25% reduction is part of something that's in the toolbox.
And just so you're aware as well, there are also other provisions, and this applies specifically to what you're talking about, planning commission here, the one that I recited of the 25%, but there also is provided in the ordinance additional powers of the approving body. On a case-by-case basis, the city may determine that requirements of the parking section are unduly stringent, and that alternative calculation or determination would best result in sufficient parking spaces being provided, and then it gives factors to consider. So there are other, it provides for other cases where these parking numbers might need to be changed from the strict number calculations. So if that makes you feel any more comfortable about it.
so no, doesn't sound like there's any precedent that we're aware of,
No.
but the ordinance provides pretty significant amount of leeway.
It's based on the conversation that we had in some detail at the meeting in December. We recognize that those were just other items in the toolbox as we continue to discuss how to address parking within the city as we continue to get more development in the city. But we did talk a lot about the 25% in December.
Yeah.
And we recognized that it was not to use the word lightly, but it was an easy way to address when we knew that there was already sufficient parking there. And since we know it's there, but we can't count it, but the 25% allows for us to say that we know that it's acceptable.
Right.
Before we get to a motion, we didn't talk very much about the building materials, and there was a note from Giffords Webster about the stucco crowns.
Yeah, we talked about that in December. Well, I don't know if it was December when we first got their site plan, because I asked that question myself. The issue is that it's the same material that's on the gas station. And to me, that means we've already set a precedent with that material. So, and I had that conversation with Giffords about if we're going to say it's an issue, we're going to have to be able to identify that we haven't already let the issue go by before. But we've got a brand new green and gas station out here with the same material. I think would be a little difficult to say everything fits but the stucco, for them to point down the street and say, but they did the same thing.
Well, it's in the mixed-use district,
Yeah.
but it's in a different part of the mixed-use district that's much closer to the village center district. So I think that's a difference compared to the location of the gas station.
Mine was about the use of the material. We've already allowed the use of the material. It could be next to my house. If we use the material once, I can't say that you can't use it. It's the same material. We're discussing material.
There's a 10% allowance for the EFS, right? That's how the gas station was allowed to use that material. And I believe that it's still a stucco crown at the plaza where 44 Burrito and Beauty Hunters is as well. So a lot of the materials that were used at both of those locations, right, were kind of new things for us. But yeah, there's that 10%.
Yeah, so there's nothing in this site plan that is not allowed by, from a materials perspective, by the ordinance.
Right.
And the precedent already supports it as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's a moot point. So I will make a motion to approve the site plan with the planning commission offering a 25% reduction in the number of required parking spaces, but having the alleyway parking spaces configured as indicated from the site plan from August 8th, 2023.
Move.
Do you want to mention anything on the record about the wall?
In the wall, in
Being
the
masonry?
inclusion of the brick wall.
And using a masonry wall in compliance with the ordinance, 5 foot in height, with 3 foot in height, and the 20 feet closest to the streets on the north and south,
As agreed by the applicant.
as agreed by the applicant.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and second. Is there questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
thanks
you
for
guys will
being
be very happy with the outcome, I promise.
Excellent, thank you.
Item B, as we move on under the agenda, item B
Okay.
is the public hearing for proposed special land use for 27411 Southfield Road.
Pardon me, you've missed A.
I missed A?
You've missed
Oh,
A.
Panera.
You're an old business.
Panera.
You know what? I'm reading it. I'm looking right at it too. Maybe I'm just trying to skip Panera.
You're having a Monday, Tuesday.
I swear, this is, wait a minute, hold on, this is why.
There,
There you
Panera.
very
It's right in
Panera,
front of
Right
public
here.
hearing, it's all, the same
me. Panera.
beginning letters, right?
Panera and their sign.
Panera and their sign. So, so Panera's open, our brand new Panera has been open. They still have some exterior improvements. They're waiting for actual good sustained spring weather, not the fake spring that we've had. And so as they were going through some of their final construction items, working on their wall and site signage, they got to the monument sign and said, well, we want to install this. Okay, but that's not part of the PUD agreement. This was something that was contemplated and discussed in first, second, several iterations of the discussions. And at the time, the architects for Panera had indicated that their intent was, if they were going to install a monument sign, they would like to use the existing monument sign base that was there as part of Citizens Bank. But again, that was not actually contemplated or included within the sign package that the Planning Commission and City Council approved. And it was not included in the overall PUD agreement, which really details all of the requirements of that plan. That sign base was inadvertently deconstructed and removed, thereby removing the existing nonconformity. So Panera has asked to amend their PUD agreement to allow for the installation of a new monument sign that would be in alignment with the conversations that were had last year. So what you have before you is are the standards, right, for monument signs and their proposed base. So in talking with Jill and with Scott Baker previously, the general consensus among those two is that this is could be considered a minor amendment. It does not necessarily need to go back to city council and can be addressed by planning commission. Does that sound about right, Leanne?
Yep, and just to give you the legal or the wording, proposed amendments or changes to an approved PUD plan shall be submitted to the planning commission. The planning commission shall determine whether the proposed modification is of such minor nature as not to violate the area and density requirements or to affect the overall character of the plan, and in such event may approve or deny the proposed amendment. So considering it was something that was already kind of contemplated initially, it makes sense that you can review it again.
So now let Eric add what he has to add.
And thankfully, there's not much more to add, other than the diagram shown on the screen here. Everything that Susie had stated is kind of the history of why we're here today. And so in working with Panera's representatives, we received the site plan from them and did a full analysis of the sign. And when shown on a scaled drawing, the outcome is what you see here, the pink being the sign, 2 feet wide by 10 feet 6 inches long. And where it would be located in meeting the minimum 10-foot setback requirements along the side street and Southfield Road. But unfortunately, by meeting those minimum standards, it's still within the 25 by 25 foot corner clear vision triangle by a certain amount. So similar to what's in your packet, on the screen here are color versions of the sign. The lighting standards will be met. But there are some certain dimensional standards that are above and beyond what the ordinance allows for this type of sign. Again, they're not permitted within the Village Center district, but as a PUD, the review letter shows the standards for a monument sign. So as you can see, the area is not compliant. The max area is 20 square feet per side. The proposed sign will be 30.75 square feet per side. The maximum height exceeds the 5-foot standard by 1/2 of an inch, so very minimal. The number of signs, again, are not permitted within the VC district, but again, this is an amendment to the planned unit development. The max total area, the standard is not more than 3 times the surface display area, that being 60 feet. In this case, it's 92.25 square feet. And then lastly, the ordinance states that monument signs require a street number, but this one does not, so technically it's included in the analysis. So whether or not a street sign should be posted on the pedestal, on the lower area of the sign or not, the ordinance requires it, and so it's mentioned as a standard. With that, that's what's before you today. Again, you can see in your review letter, there was an existing monument sign base or structure that, as part of the original agreement, that Panera was, if they were to have a sign out front, it was to make use of that existing structure. But since that was removed, again, that's why we're here today. So, any questions?
So what changed? Why do they now all of a sudden want to have a monument sign when it was apparently not important to them when they were doing the initial construction?
I mean, I can't speak entirely to that, though I surmise based on some of the conversations I've had with their sign contractor that there may have been some miscommunications between those two. But, you know, I can only give you conjecture as to why, you know, something may have changed, but this is what they're hoping for.
And I have concerns about the size of the sign, especially given the fact that it impedes the clear vision on a corner with a traffic light. I mean, it's granted the traffic light does offer some control of the traffic, so it's different than if just a stop sign or what have you. But if somebody can't see around that sign, then it's a risk. There's reasons why we have those types of measurements for signs that would be placed in an area like that on a street corner.
Do we have representation? No?
Here,
Yes, sir.
do you know if this is sitting in the same spot where the old
Big.
I believe it is.
It's close, yeah.
It's just taller.
It's, right, the size of it would exceed, what's it?
Longer, right?
Taller and longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't remember how long that one was.
Yeah.
Is it in the water area?
I don't know that we ever got the dimensions of that, the original
The
structure.
original structure.
Yeah.
It's just the corner of it that fits in the clear view section.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you pull up to that corner, because the sign actually sits inside what I call the point of the sidewalks,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really see, you don't have an issue with the street or the sidewalk. It's just gonna be a big sign. I guess the question
Right.
to Panera is, they've done everything to make sure everything fits in the past. What happened? They decided to, break protocol. I guess. I mean, everything else they did fit. What happened? They want to change to not fit today, unless they already have a pre-existing sign that was already made for the site, and then they realized it wasn't installed. No comment. But that was just a statement.
Hypothetical.
Truly.
Hypothetical, yes.
But to your point, I come down that corner. If you stop at the stop sign, if you stop at the light, the sign sits back far enough, it would never impede you seeing the street, but it would just be, you wouldn't miss the Panera sign though. It would be there.
You will see the sign. You might not see people behind the
No,
sign.
because
but-
the sidewalk, the point of the sidewalk is up in front of the sign. When you pull up, you're already looking at the corner of the walkway and the people coming towards you. It's just big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the location, it's just, why is
size.
it, why is
Like
it
the
so
size.
big?
Well, it might not be the first car, it might be the second car that's rolling through that doesn't see the bike coming behind it and
Now, that's true.
something like that. The first car probably would see it. That is big, I agree, it's big.
It's just big.
And they had a perfect pediment there and
Yeah.
they took it out. Is that our problem?
Right. You've had several of the same thoughts and comments that ran through my head.
Panera is asking for us to approve this.
Correct?
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I got that part right.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I'm not convinced that it's necessary
Yeah,
for us to do
I don't know why it needs to be
this.
that big. I see the previous pedestal, and that seemed adequate. I don't know why they would need to make it almost 50% bigger.
I don't think we've been provided any justification for the size requested. So I would,
Are we, here's a question, just as discussion. Are we against Panera having a monument sign? Or are we simply against the fact that it's so big?
personally, I'm just against it, how big it is. There was
I-
already a monument sign there,
Yeah.
the bank used it.
And I can understand that mistakes happen during construction, and to replace the existing monument pedestal would be completely reasonable and conform to what the standards were that we previously agreed upon. But, to make it
A third.
considerably larger seems excessive.
Any comments? That's a smart, not a comment.
No, I kind of said what I said.
Well,
I don't see any need to move forward with this request as it stands myself.
so we have to make a motion to,
Yes, you need to make a motion to do whatever you would like
send it back
to do.
and deny it and send it back. And say it's too big. That's my suggestion.
Just for, in terms of meeting with the applicant, having conversations with the applicant going forward, if this is kicked back or tabled, is there objection to the encroachment into the 25 by 25 foot triangle, even if it was reduced? The size of the sign to meet the standards of monument signs? If that was the case and they corrected the size to meet the standards of the ordinance, if it was still located within the green shaded area, the triangle, would the planning commission be open to consideration as long as there was justification? Then I ask because it looks like there is some room to shift it outside of that triangle area. So I just want to know like what the
My only
expectations
concern
would
about
be.
that would be if the Southfield corridor reconstruction project goes forward with our COC and changes the distance that the sign is from the street.
The back of curb or the traffic lanes.
Now traffic's moving closer to this sign, which could increase the risk of an accident. And we can't predict it, so we don't know. So,
I think if we're doing this as a fresh build, because the foundation's gone, right?
Yes.
Let's get it, I mean, if we're gonna allow a sign in the district, which is not allowed, let's get the sign buttoned down on all the parameters that we're supposed to have it buttoned down. So it's gotta be out of the triangle, it's gotta be the right size, can't be too high by half an inch. Let's make it too high by less than half an inch, like 0. And I'm not sure I even agree with having a sign there, but we'll have to wait to see if they want to move forward. But I would say let's start fresh and reapply.
Still need that motion, guys.
I'd make a motion to deny the request as presented.
I second it.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, stay tuned, I'll communicate that information to them.
Thank you. Well, I don't have to say B, I already did that.
Now you can get to B.
And B is, I already read it once, so. I can read it again.
Read it again, please,
Okay,
sir.
we're at B, the public hearing proposed for special land use for 27411 Southfield Road, J Bird's Bar and Grill. So we're gonna open up our public hearing, or we're proposing a public hearing. Opening the, because I didn't remember what.
We'll have Eric do a quick recap for us, and then we'll open the
Okay,
public hearing.
there we go.
Yep, so existing site, existing building and facility at 27411 Southfield Road. They are seeking special land use to repurpose the existing restaurant building for both restaurant and bar. It's the proposal to obtain a liquor license that requires the special land use. Otherwise, the building itself was originally approved back in 2010 and has been utilized as the same type of use since then, so restaurant. Our analysis, when we received the plans, was that the existing facility has 26 parking spaces provided. At the time of approval, our analysis indicated that the parking calculation was not done correctly. So we feel or believe that the site is an existing nonconformity and had been approved as such back in 2010. So as it stands today, the square footage of the building itself as well as the adjacent patio, when applying the current code standards, the parking requirement is 41 parking spaces. And as you can see here, only 26 are provided. The site has always had 26 parking spaces provided for the restaurant use within. The ownership had changed throughout those 14 years. And it's our understanding that there were liquor licenses that were obtained. And so the point is that the site was originally approved as 26 parking spaces, and it's our belief that that has always been a nonconformity. So that still remains the case today, and again, the 26 parking spaces are there to provide for the 41 that are required, which results in a 15-space parking shortage. So as we've talked about tonight, that there is a 25% waiver reduction. Just to put that in front of you of what that would look like, that would be approximately 10 parking spaces. So if it was applied, and I'm not saying that it would be, but numbers-wise, that would be a reduction of 10 spaces, so the shortage would be 5 spaces. So we did have conversations with the applicant to explain that if this is a successful business, and we hope that it is, that if there's any indication that there's parking challenges, especially as it relates to nearby single-family residential neighborhoods, that in moving forward for this existing nonconformity, that there may be some opportunities to take advantage of obtaining parking elsewhere. So whether that's from a shared parking agreement or, you know, taking it a little bit further to implement on-street parking spaces within the 300 feet limitation that the ordinance allows for. So this diagram here, this aerial, shows where the 300 feet would approximately fall and where potentially parking spaces could be constructed within the right-of-way, or if you look north of the site, there may be some opportunities for parking agreements from adjacent commercial uses. So, but as it stands, again, it is just a reuse of the same type of facility, and therefore it'll operate as an existing nonconformity. So if there were any changes that were made to the square footage of the building or the patio, then that would open the ordinance again to have to address the non-conforming parking situation. So with that, if there's any questions, again, the main concern over this reuse is just that there's an existing parking shortage. But again, it's being reused as the same as it's always been. And I don't believe we had any comments from the public or from neighbors who may have been notified. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Nobody submitted comments?
I'm sorry?
Nobody submitted comments?
Nobody submitted written comments.
Okey-dokey.
So you are free
So,
now to
so
open
we're
your
free to
public
open
hearing.
our public hearing.
Yes, sir.
So if there's anyone that has a comment regarding the,
I have a question. Tom Kinez, 19115 Glenwood. Welcome. It's a great property. Why? That's a question I would like you to answer. And secondly, whether is property going to be leased or if you're going to have ownership. Liquor license, I'm in the industry, fantastic. Might set a standard here in Lathrup to kind of our fellow folks down in Oak Park possibly see, we might get a little competition there. But as far as your, do you have another property that, will this be your second property or what? And that, those are my questions. The last question I had was, as far as lighting outside, I would just beware that bright lights on the patio area are very obtrusive.
Excuse me, Tom, these comments are supposed to be directed
Well, I'm
to the
just
planning,
wondering. Thank you,
planning
thank you.
commission about that
And that was
specific
my
project,
question.
not his other properties or
before you
ownership
respond,
considerations.
we have to finish our public hearing.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments for the public hearing portion of this? Oh,
Hello, Autumn Susanna, 19252 Rainbow Drive. I just wanted to say, when I lived on Lathrup Boulevard, we used to walk to Salvatore Scalapini. We would take our kids and risk our lives and cross that Southfield, and it was worth it. It was fun, and I just want to say, I hope you get the space, and we would love to have an eatery in Lathrup, and those 5 parking spots, I'll leave my car at home, so don't you worry about that. All right.
thank you.
Interesting.
Well, I know there's no other public comment here because everybody here is, we know what they're here for. So we can close the public hearing portion of this. You don't have to have a motion for that. We can just close it, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then we'll move on to the discussion part. And obviously, the applicant is here.
The applicant is here.
How's everyone?
Good evening.
So I'm trying to remember these questions in order.
You are.
I'm Jay Brown. I'm sorry. And that's my wife, Curtier, over there. So it's a good property because it's been kept up, pretty clean, nice area, even though it's been closed a couple years. So me and my wife are residents of Southfield for 18 years, so we've seen everything that's been over there. This is my second location. We just shut down a restaurant we had in Southfield called J. Burchell Rotisserie and Grill. Lease was up, and we were trying to buy another property, but that, so long story short, we are in Lathrup. I already have a liquor license, I just have to transfer it, so that shouldn't be an issue. What was the next question?
Ownership versus lease?
Oh, I'm leasing, yeah, so basically signed a 5-year lease. So hopefully we'll be here for 5 years or longer than that. So it's bar in the name, but we're really a sit-down restaurant. It's just, we want people to know we have, beverages. That's pretty much it. Anything else?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How many seating for how many in the restaurant?
Right now, it looks like it's about, with the bar, probably about 40 or 50.
Okay.
With the patio, you probably can, it's a 30 by 30, so depending on how the patio is set up, you may can get another 30 so out there, so,
Okay.
yeah.
One issue I had heard from the previous restaurant that was in that location was that people would miss it because it's a dark building, and especially at night, it's not super well lit. They had approached the city about, actually, they didn't even approach the city, they just erected lights on the front of the building that were non-conforming with the zoning ordinance. So do you have any concerns about like wayfinding and people?
Well, if it's dark, you can't miss it because it's a dark building. But when the lights are actually on, the building is lit, and the parking lot is lit. Now the patio, the lights are not bright. They're just like it's only like 3 lights. But I think once the light is there on the timer, once they go out, it's real black. You will miss it. So it all depends on the signage. So if the sign lights up, if you have a nice sign, then you'll see it. At night. In the daytime, years ago, when I used to come by, only thing flow of traffic would get in there, what might have been hard. But after COVID, I don't think it'll be as hard. So.
Well, and just as a side note, we are getting another crosswalk, like right there.
That's right.
So, people will be able to find J. Burchell Park
So
Road.
they're gonna be able to slow down and turn left?
Yes.
We're hoping.
I'm
Yeah,
hoping they're
okay,
gonna be able to turn left, but definitely they will slow down.
Slow down, okay.
Definitely.
Okay, that's good.
I have a quick question regarding the hours of operation. On what was sent to us, it's Monday 11:11, Tuesday through Friday 11 to midnight, and then Sunday 11:11, but Saturday it's 11 to 1. And since this is pretty much a bedroom community, and the peak time is from 6 to 11, I guess the question is why 1?
So, because it's a Saturday, and a lot of my past clients or customers who stay at my last restaurant were Lathrup residents, and they're retired business owners, and a lot of them, they don't have to go home early. So, I mean, really, it's a Saturday night, so if there's something going on, it's not necessarily I'm stay open there late, it's just, I like the option too.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I had that question too.
It's an option.
Yeah, it's an option.
That was having the option.
Yeah.
Does so to Giffords,
Susie might
do the hours fit with what, because we have something that states something about, I just, in the process of me looking, I just couldn't find it, but I know there's something that related to hours.
Yes, and I somehow missed that, actually. I think I just was all, that was just
But
looking
it
at all
wasn't,
once.
it
It's
wasn't in
supposed to be
here, so
11.
I wasn't sure.
The limitation is 11. So, typically, and I think what was done for Event House, this will probably have to be a variance request from the city council for flexibility on those hours. So, we can certainly talk about that, and I apologize for missing that little
It's okay.
detail.
It's all right.
But that is, Event House has, they were, I think, our most recent.
I just remember we had this discussion, I just couldn't find the information.
Yeah,
But I knew there was something about the hours, and I had a feeling it was an hour in our area to be able to approve the hours.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that at least you were aware. Because it was something, as soon as I saw 1 o'clock, I said, yeah, we had this discussion, and I just can't find it for some reason.
I'm glad you saw that one.
It's
So
a code enforcement issue anyway. It would be at that point as well, so.
So we'll circle back about that one, but not an insurmountable problem.
But from the planning commission standpoint, we're here for the special land use regarding the liquor license.
Yes, and you really only need to make a recommendation to council, either in the affirmative or denial. I mean, I know what I think you should do. I think you're gonna end up doing it, but you just need to make a recommendation to city council, and they will take the final action on the special land use request. Because there was the approved site plan on file, Jay already has the administrative approval that he needs for his site plan.
Gotcha.
4.7, hours of operation. To this end, no place of business, trade, or commerce shall be open for the transaction of business with the general public between the hours of 11 and 7.
11 PM and 7 AM.
Yeah, 11 PM, 7 AM, sorry. The following day, except for the express prior approval of the zoning board of appeals as a deviation under provisions of section 7.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Is there a motion to make a recommendation to council?
I would move to recommend to council to proceed with Jay Bird's Bar and Grill
Special land use.
special land use application.
Second.
We move to second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, that motion,
All right, thank you, ladies.
recommendation carries.
Good luck.
I seconded it.
Right.
Shoot. Okay. Ooh,
Ooh, it's exciting, isn't it?
well, I just looked at D. I'm not sure I can do D.
Yes, you can. You can still preside over the election of officers. You already have some.
I know, you're trying to tell me what I want.
I'm not gonna do that for
Okay,
this one.
we're at
I think you should do what I recommend.
we're on D, the election of officers for the planning commission. So, I have to ask, is this like every other board I've been on where we have to declare all officers open first?
All offices are automatically open
Okay,
because you,
This was the first one for me. I was appointed, so I never had to do this part before.
you really didn't
No,
have to
I've
do
not.
this?
This is the first, this is the
Like-
first.
Okay, well,
Yeah, somebody resigned.
so what will happen, and correct me if I'm wrong on these details, because it's been a year, so we do this every year, right? Election of new officers, you have your chair, vice chair, and secretary positions open. Start with chair, anyone, you can even recommend yourself if you'd like to be so bold. Recommend, make a motion for whomever to serve as chair, you accept or decline,
I got you.
and then we proceed with the vote. Sound right? Did I get it all?
Yep.
Until we have a full slate of 3 individuals.
Can you recommend a commissioner who is not present? Because they cannot confirm or deny if they want the position.
I mean, that's kind of like being voluntold, right?
Which is what I told them I was gonna do.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's kind of a unique situation that, you're missing people. I mean, did they say they wanted to be part of it? I mean, usually it's sort of more of an informal, like, it's formal that you're electing, but I mean, on the other hand, you're all comrades, and I would think that informal, you guys kind of can agree who's gonna do what, that sort of thing. So if someone's not here and you think they want the position, but they haven't told anybody or anything, then, I mean, potentially table it. If you think if there's not enough people here that wanna do it, if y'all otherwise can fill the positions with the people that are here and willing to serve in those positions, then I say go for it, but,
When we had the meeting, we knew this was coming.
Right.
And of course, Will was very insistent that he was going to say I should stay as chair. And I said, will you be vice chair? And he said, yes.
I mean, I do recall this conversation.
But then he didn't show up.
I have another question. So if we select officers, if we select somebody who's not here to fill an office, and they inform us at a later date that they don't want to be in that office, does the planning commission have the ability?
I think we can work that out as far as, you know, not being, if they're declining to accept, you find out after the fact, we can have a new election subsequent. I mean, as long as
Is there a
you're,
requirement to
you're
have-
following the requirements of, you know, electing, so I don't think it's
Is there a
gonna be that
requirement to have
big of a
election in
deal.
February?
The requirements actually have your election at your first regular meeting of
Oh,
the year.
we didn't meet
And since
Which
our
we didn't
meeting
meet
was
in
canceled
January.
We didn't meet last
Right.
And when we talked about it in December on the
Okay.
assumption we were meeting in January.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, by going ahead and holding it, and then if he were to decline subsequently,
We just-
then I don't think it's the spirit of, you know, you've fulfilled what the requirements are, and you can backtrack and
I would figure he could
somebody else,
resign
I
the
mean,
role.
Do another election
Oh,
Yeah.
Officially.
That's fine.
for that position.
for that
Yeah.
specific office?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
I'm going with legal opinion on this one.
Yeah, I
so-
don't think it's a real, like, yeah, I mean, but if are you kind of questioning whether he wants to do it?
No. I asked him point blank what he
Yeah.
do, and he agreed. I just did. Well, we were planning for January. We thought
Yeah.
we were meeting
Right.
because she mentioned that we were going to have elections in January, and I said, you know, would you be vice chair?
Well, and we've
Yeah, it's-
sort
it's
of set an informal precedent of kind
Yeah,
of
we kind of walked our.
growth,
Yeah.
you know, walking up, like graduating into the different,
Yeah.
different
It's a
positions.
little odd, not odd, you know, but I don't think it's, and legally, it's gonna be like any violation
Okay.
of some protocol per se that it's gonna cause a problem, so,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
yeah.
because I was definitely going to recommend him,
Well, come back home.
but I guess you have to have a chair first.
That would be ideal. That would be ideal, but I suppose you could work backwards and start secretary, vice chair, chair.
Is that made through a motion to nominate, or?
Yeah.
Yes,
And so
yep.
I move to nominate Commissioner Stansbury as the chairman of the.
I second that.
Okay,
Do you accept?
I accept.
Oh, great.
All those in favor? right?
Oh, that's right. I can
Sure.
say all those.
He's not the chairman yet, so all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Got a chair.
All right.
okay.
Turn the meeting over to you.
Now we need a nomination for vice chair.
So I will make a nomination for Will Fobbs to be the vice chair of the planning commission.
Seconded.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? No. So we got Will. Secretary, right?
Yes, sir.
I really want to nominate Krista. But it's up to, you all have a recommended. Krista? She's not here, but.
Did you talk to her about it?
You,
I have not spoken to her about this, but.
That's a little trickier, I
Yeah,
would say.
that would be, I didn't talk to Krista. I mean, we joked about it, but we didn't talk about it.
Right.
So we have to have, we have to have the secretary at this meeting, or can we table the nomination for secretary to the next meeting?
Well, I would like to make a motion for Bo Tamarelli to be the secretary of the planning commission.
Okay. We have to accept them.
I'll
Somebody
second
has to
it.
second it, I think, first.
I'll second it.
It's been moved.
Can I ask what the exact role is? Because I'm not sure that I know what it is.
You are doing it right now.
That's right.
You're sitting, you're participating,
All
there's
right.
really,
Yes, I
there's
would.
maybe a few
And-
things that I
and
think
you-
I've ever
and you-
had
and
anybody
you pray
sign.
people don't resign in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. In my
I mean, I
experience,
don't, are the minutes taken by the secretary? That's traditionally, but,
The minutes
Yeah.
are taken by our clerk.
Our clerk.
Yep, so
the
you're
way,
lucky.
the way that my reading of our rules, the planning commission's rules, and how we've kind of used these offices in the past is, if people in offices who are at higher ranking offices, chair or vice chair, are absent, then the secretary would fill
Yeah,
in as the
that's it.
person running the
Right.
meeting.
got it.
Apart from that, there really isn't anything different than you would do as a normal planning commission.
That's it.
If nominated, I will accept. Sure.
All those
Do
in
it.
favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Welcome aboard.
I'm glad you didn't vote against yourself. Congratulations to
All right, got that done.
all of our new officers.
E, We all should have received the proposed meeting dates for 2024, which still fall, I believe, on the third Tuesday of the month,
At 7 p.m.
which is no change from the prior years.
Nope. Same bat time, same bat channel.
So we just have to
Adopt.
adopt these dates for our meeting. Is that-
I move to adopt the dates as proposed for our meetings.
That's it. No, this isn't a motion, this is just an adoption.
It is a motion.
It is a motion.
To adopt.
A motion to adopt. Mr. Secretary, second.
I will second that. I'm just looking at the date.
Yeah, just look at the date too.
I will second that.
It's been moved and second to adopt the dates proposed for the 2024 meetings, which is the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, we have dates for the rest of the calendar year. All right. I lost my spot. Oops, sorry. Too many things open. All right. There's the dates.
All right.
It's on you.
So now, the moment that you guys have been waiting for, I'm sure, bated breath, our annual report. As I was putting this together and looking back over the last few annual reports that we've done, I am pleased to say, and this is not actually like written anywhere in here, but the Planning Commission has been progressively getting busier with new projects and new developments and overall improvements to the business corridor, which is fantastical. So with that, so you know who each other are. We do have a new planning commissioner, by the way, Jim Scuso. So, and you have seen a little bit of change, right, sitting on this board, sorry. We've had a few resignations, we've had a few reappointments. But overall, there's been consistency within this board. Eric and I continue to be your support, your staff support, right, your staff and planning support for this. So, but really, what we're here to talk about are the what you've done. So you have reviewed 5 site plans, made one special land use recommendation, which was that special land use recommendation accompanied a site plan approval, and that was for the event house. The Zoning Board of Appeals has also considered 2 applications. One is still pending and one was withdrawn ultimately. And there were 3 administrative approvals by myself. So those site plan reviews, that is the gas station, BP gas station, 26727 Southfield Road. You may recall that was in regards to the wall. There's, their wall right there at the corner. We also had 27701 Southfield Road, the event house. So that was, that was the change of use in special land use. They also had one of those variances that City Council considered for the hours of operations. We had our the patio for 44 Burrito, which it looks like that will be installed in the spring. She did actually hear all of the comments that you all provided her, and said, you know what, I'm gonna wait a minute and get business going before I start in on that patio. And then we also had the facade renovation for 276 Southfield. That's the former location for Panera. And then we started the year with 27300 Southfield Road, which we heard earlier tonight. So, so as I said, you're progressively getting busier and busier, and this is a good thing, that we're seeing investment within the community. We've had a couple of different public hearings. Obviously, we had the one that was part of the special land use for the event house. We also had 3 different public hearings for the dumpster and rubbish tax amendments, the laundromat text amendments, and the mobile food vending text amendments. We also had a final public hearing for the 23-28 capital improvements plan, which is ultimately approved by City Council. And then you'll be getting that larger updated document later on this spring. And as you know, our text amendments, our zoning updates were really, they were a bit reactionary, I'll be honest. They were reactionary, but in a way that recognizes the challenges that are impacting our businesses and our properties, right? The dumpster and rubbish, we saw that was an issue in trying to fit those square dumpsters into round holes on the garbage cans. You're like, there. So, so we're trying to find ways as a commission to work with development and to remove the impediments that may be there or perceived impediments that may be there. The laundromat standards, that's obviously the freshest one. And I think ultimately that is, that will be a benefit to our new tenants, our new future tenants. And then mobile food vending, to allow for greater flexibility in where those operators can literally operate. We have discussed several amendments that I imagine are gonna come down the pipe for the Planning Commission as we continue to move through this year. We still have the high hopes to go through and review and amend the definitions section to the ordinance. We've talked about solar energy standards and overall sustainability standards. Parking is naturally going to be one of those, the next set of amendments that I believe that we'll be tackling and addressing, probably closer towards the midpoint of this year. And as it continues to pop up in our discussions, the consistent communication with the road commission, things seem to be happening with them, right? We've got not 1, not 2, but 3 pedestrian signals that are going to be installed in the next year and a bit, right? We've got, the DDA was awarded a grant to at least make one of those happen. And so we're seeing the pedestrian and streetscaping enhancements that we've all long wished for. We're starting to see those come to fruition. So, and I do have in here related to Southfield Road, we were able to get a grant writer from MCOG to help us write the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity RAISE grant. And so if we're successful in that, we could see construction of at least one of the 3 phases for Southfield Road in 2027. So, keep your fingers crossed, but like all this to say, we are doing good work, you are doing good work, and you are making these improvements, and putting the city in a position that we can have a thriving corridor. So, that is our activity in a nutshell for 2023. Congratulations, and let me know if you have any questions.
I think the Planning Commission did a great job this year with support from Susie and Eric and the rest of your team, and thank you for that.
You all did all the work.
Yeah, we just met once a month and talked about stuff.
That's right, we just talked about it.
That's important work too, right?
One of the things I would like to see in next year's report is that we did have meetings jointly with the DDA and the City Council, hopefully more than one.
Yes.
I think that that's really important, and I know there are legitimate reasons why that didn't happen, this year, but it's something that I would encourage we focus and prioritize to make sure it does happen in 2024.
For sure. And I neglected to mention this, but you will need a motion to forward this to city council. Please.
We're open to a motion to forward the annual report to the city council.
I make a motion to forward the annual report on the activities of the planning commission be forwarded to the city council for review.
I second that motion.
Been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
As shown, I would add, without correction.
Alrighty. Development project update. Getting close, we just need another B. Another B. So really, as I was going through this, I mean, already we have changes, right? We've approved the laundromat. We do have some things on here that, we've got some new ones, right? We've got the Papa's Pizza and Barbecue, and the Sam's Shoe Outlet. Neither of those have those PZE numbers that, planning, zoning, and enforcement. Planning, zoning, engineering, that's what it is. Neither one of those.
Enforcement too.
Came through. It's engineering. I know it's all supposed to be kind of in that realm. Those are interior, interior build outs. Just want to make sure that those are in there. Since the beginning of the year, in addition to the administrative approval for Jaybirds, there was also an administrative approval for the Med Spa, which is going in at the former DiMaggio Jewelers. So that is, I'm glad to see that property will be occupied. I know that they are working right now with the building department to finish those interior building plan reviews. There's no additional steps with us, or with me or the planning commission. I anticipate that they will be open probably April, but we'll be in touch with a grand opening date when we have one. Obviously Jaybirds, Papa's Pizza, speaking of, they will be going before the Zoning Board of Appeals on Monday, 26th, this Monday, right? And they are seeking a variance for their signage, the coverage of their window signage, since they exceed that, the standard, right? So, we'll see what the Zoning Board of Appeals has to say about their application. And then we had Panera, so you actually knocked off quite a few of these things on this development project update. But I am happy to answer any questions.
Well, you mean because they have so much stuff in the window?
Yes, sir. There's the ordinance allows for a 10% coverage, which they
They've
exceed.
exceeded.
Yes. And I realize that this is something that is throughout the corridor, unfortunately, and so I have been working closely with code enforcement to see, how can we get this addressed and addressed consistently.
Do you know if they're gonna get that lit up sign back?
The trailer sign?
That's what it's called?
Yeah,
The-
it's
the
The
gone.
one that was in the parking spot?
The one that was in the parking
Yes.
lot? No, they will not get that back.
Okay.
That was not part of their variance request, and that is not a permitted sign type anywhere in the city.
It was very distracting.
Yes,
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was, and, that is one reason why that sign was, removed relatively.
I didn't know if that was gonna be part of their request, that's a,
No, that was not.
it was lighting up the neighborhood.
Yes, it was, but so now they're just going for window coverage.
Gotcha, okay.
I am happy to answer any questions about anything on here. Any?
I have a question about the Patton Sons project.
Yes.
Reinstate site plans, no changes to plans or zoning. Is this like an existing construction project that just has not been
Yes.
completed?
That is actually the apartments over there on
the ones-
the
yes.
service drive. So this is their, like, they had always envisioned that project to be 3 phases. The first phase being the parking lot, the second phase being what is currently constructed there, and then the final phase, there's actually 2 buildings that go closer to the service drive. So this would be implementing that final phase. I've talked to Attorney Baker about this. This will be their last opportunity to renew these plans.
Yeah,
And then
because
they'll have to come
we've
back
reduced these
before-
plans many times over the,
Yes, this project
least 6
started
years.
before me, so,
Yeah.
I've actually, I anticipate that they're gonna, begin pulling permits, once the weather starts to break a little bit more,
great.
so.
So,
Because they started, that process to renew these permits, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
so.
Okay, good. All right, so this is a renewal of the existing site plans, which they will then start pulling permits to execute a project against.
Correct,
That's what you anticipate?
yes.
Okay, great.
Correct.
Anything else under 9 for general communication? And we will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the meeting, sir.
So moved. We are adjourned.